that we can could share our screens if need be.
Yes. That's sharing options, all participants. How about I just add you as who can start sharing with someone else is sharing. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. I am going to just put on all of them, okay? So control the settings on your end. Okay.
Perfect.
Hopefully you'll be able to share. I'm just going to give a little introduction to people right now so they know what this is all about. So to begin Eco Week, we are with horticultural experts from the Riverwood Conservancy, which is one of the most ecologically diverse communities in the Credit Valley watershed and home to the variety of wildlife and plant life. It is a volunteer and member-based charity that provides programs and services focused on environmental education, conservation, gardening, and horticulture. Everyone, please welcome Carrie Furneaux and Catherine, I'm sorry, I don't know your last name. Westmansdorf, am I saying?
Excellent.
To teach us about the importance of planting and its benefits with social, cognitive, physical, and mental health goals. So welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction, Ms. Castro. It's so wonderful to be here. Happy Earth Week, everybody. This is a terrific week for us to join you. My name is Carrie Furneaux, and I'm the Enabling Garden Coordinator at the Riverwood Conservancy here in Mississauga. I'll explain a little bit more about what my title means and what my role is at Riverwood. But I'd like to introduce my colleague, Catherine, who's going to join us today. Catherine is, well, Catherine, I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Oh, thanks, Carrie. Thanks so much for having me. I'm the Education Program Manager, but for the last 8 years, I've also delivered the high school programs at Riverwood, focused on typically science, geography, math, and we have a retreat program there as well. And we've been doing that work virtually since the pandemic started. And so there are a number of ways that students have been able to visit Riverwood virtually over that time. So I'm happy to answer questions about that type of programming, but I have learned so much about gardening from Carrie. And one of the places that I get to spend some time in for our high school programs is this beautiful enabling garden that's like right at the center of sort of the gateway to this beautiful 150-acre park. And Carrie can grow anything. It's amazing. So I'm here to learn from Carrie today too. So I'm really excited to get to be a student. So that's why I'm here. I'm happy to answer questions in the chat and just to help support your learning today. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Catherine. So it's so great to join you this week. And we really thank you for inviting us into your virtual classroom. I know that this has been a little bit strange the last couple of years for everybody. Places where we normally would have gone in person, we're going via, computers, and we have tech issues. We have things that jump in, things that fall out. Just this morning, Catherine and I did a little test with each other, and I sounded like a chipmunk. So apparently that's a new one for me. I haven't quite experienced that one yet. But anyway, I hope you can all hear us loud and clear. And if there are any issues where you can't see something, can't hear anything, teachers, maybe if you just pop it into the chat, Catherine will be monitoring that, and she can alert me to any issues that we might have. So Earth Week, Earth Day, the theme for Earth Day 2022 is invest in our planet. And at Riverwood, we are constantly investing in the planet. We look at things through a conservation lens, talking about the land, the water, the animals, insects, and all the plants and trees that surround us. In our gardens at Riverwood, we support organic practices. And that supports the food that we grow, as well as the pollinators who play a key role in helping plants make their seeds and fruits. So by keeping pesticides away from our plants, we are encouraging and supporting the health and biodiversity of all of the insects and animals that call Riverwood their home. When we are at Riverwood, which is such an incredible place to be, and I hope that some of you have visited, and if you haven't visited before, I hope that after our presentation, you will feel that it's a place that you'd love to come and visit. But the land that we're work on at Riverwood is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, and Haudenosaunee nations. And today, this place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and we are so very grateful to work on this land and spend the time that we do at Riverwood. We make deep and personal connections to nature while we're at Riverwood, and it's the connections that we all make that lead us to long-term changes and the need to protect our planet. So when we connect to nature, we care about nature. And Catherine and I spend a lot of time with our other colleagues at Riverwood, just being on the land, being out there, caring and observing and connecting. And I hope that that's something that that you've had a chance to do in the past, and if not, is something that you could work into your future lives. So let's get started. Let's get started on what we're actually going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about seeds in the garden. And I wonder, as we get started, perhaps the teachers who were there could take a few minutes to just kind of check in with students and just see if any of your students have actually planted before. Has anybody planted a garden? Has anybody grown seeds? I mean, I know that, you know, grade 3, the plant program and, you know, the curriculum there, everybody's kind of put a bean seed in a jar before, but I'm wondering if you've gone beyond that. I wonder if you've got access to a garden space or a balcony or a community garden. Maybe you have parents or grandparents, family members who like to plant. So just put it in the chat there if anybody has experiences growing. And if you do, what are your successes? What do you love to grow? I mean, Catherine's right. We try everything at Riverwood. We really do. And I've been gardening for a long time. I wouldn't call myself an expert. I think that the gardens and the plants and the seeds, they kind of dictate what's going to happen. And certainly Mother Nature plays a huge impact in that too. How many of you went to bed last night and it was snowing, middle of April, and a big old blanket of snow? I quickly ran outside and rescued some pansies that I'd put out, only because, not because it was so cold, but because the weight of the snow was going to squish them all. So as much as we try and control what happens in the garden, we don't always have a say in that. We can certainly add to the gardens. We can help things along the way. We can nurture. We can even talk to our plants if that's what works for us. That definitely works for me. But it's very interesting to sort of see what does happen in the springtime, because that's generally when we think about planting seeds, and we don't always have control over what that looks like. But one of the things that I do, and I mean, I talk about a bean seed as one that we all grow when we're in elementary school, but you know, I really do love to grow beans because there are so many different types, and they're generally a plant that has an excellent success rate. And then at the end of the day, they create these beautiful, yummy beans as well. So, so that's pretty great. Okay, so what I would like to do here is I'm just going to, let me just see where we're at here. Let me see if I can share my screen.
And Carrie, while you do that,
Yeah.
Mr. Abruscato's class, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, some students were in a green industries class. So, you know, if I wonder if they learned about growing in a greenhouse environment, food crops, or ornamentals, native plants. It would be really interesting to know what students learn there, but it's so great to know that that course is available. So thanks for sharing that.
That's wonderful. Okay, I'm going to just share my screen here, and then perhaps I don't think I need to share sound, but here we go. Let's try this. And
yeah, that looks great, Carrie.
Perfect. I'm just going to put it into, there we go. Perfect.
Beautiful.
Okay, so you can see everything there. Amazing. All right, so seeds in the garden. These are beautiful. I love to see plants like this. I love to see plants that are right straight out of the dirt, that they still got all that lovely dirt clinging to them, and the soil is fresh and damp, and you just know that these have been pulled out and are so ready to eat. So these are some of the plants that we would grow at Riverwood, some beets and some radishes. And like I say, we try and grow everything, but these are some of the early spring plants that we put in. Radishes like it to be quite cold, so we can get some seeds in the garden. And they don't take very long to mature. So it's one of the quickest things that we can put in the garden. So I would like to just show you this next screen here, because this might be something that you recognize if you've ever been to Riverwood before. This is a piece of public art, and it is visible from Burnhamthorpe Road. So if you have driven along Burnhamthorpe, or perhaps you've been on the bus, waiting at the bus stop there, then you would perhaps recognize this as being the entranceway to Riverwood Park. The sculpture itself is known as the Pine Sanctuary, and it's very visible from the street. So if you sort of, when I flicked on this slide, you went, oh wait, I know where that is. That is Riverwood. And when you get to Riverwood, we have maps around that will show you all of the wonderful things that you can do when you're in the park. Different areas will give you access to different trails, beautiful gardens, historic buildings. So this is a map that is available on our website, as well as posted at the park when you get there, so that you can have an idea of where those trails go. You can stay on the upper levels where there are beautiful gardens and accessible trails, or you could take a walk down towards the Credit River and take a view in at the beautiful forests that we have there. Now, this is the barn, and the barn is a central part of the main garden here as you enter into Riverwood at the McEwen Terrace. And this, of course, is the enabling garden. So I wonder if this is a spot that some of the students or maybe teachers might recognize if they've walked through the park before. This is the spot in the garden where I do most of my work in terms of planting and garden area. And you can see that the enabling garden that we have at Riverwood, it's a hands-on teaching garden. It's fully accessible in that the pathways are smooth concrete. And so if we have people with mobility devices, it is much easier for them to navigate the pathways around the gardens. You'll also notice that many of our planters are raised off of the ground at different levels. So we have large pots, as well as this structure here. It's called an A-frame. You can see that there's space under here. So if somebody is using a wheelchair, they can wheel themselves right up beside it, or they can put their legs underneath there. But also these raised beds just allow for easy access and comfortable gardening. So exposure to nature is beneficial to people of all ages. It's a proven fact that we just feel better in nature. But how do we get people to experience nature, especially if they do have some physical or mental health challenges? Which kind of brings me back to my title at Riverwood. So as the Enabling Garden Coordinator, I'm actually a horticultural therapist. Now, that's something that you might not have heard before. It's new for a lot of people. A lot of people know what horticulture is, and they kind of know what therapy is, but they don't necessarily know what happens when the two of those get blended together. In many cases, the therapy part is, some of you might be familiar with art therapy. You might have heard of music therapy. Well, horticultural therapy is really just sort of a garden therapy. It brings us into the garden environment. It brings us into nature, and it becomes something that is beneficial for many, many people. So The definition of horticultural therapy is that it is the engagement of a person in nature or garden-related activities by a trained therapist, so somebody like me who has studied horticultural therapy. And really what we're trying to do is just promote the well-being of its participants. Participants range in age and ability, but the outcome remains the same. We want to improve the well-being of those involved. So when I have participants come through the enabling garden, sometimes I'm working with young students, and sometimes I'm working with older populations too, and everything in between. So I think the youngest participant I've ever had in the enabling garden was 4 years old, and the oldest was 101. So that spread just shows the sort of diversity of age, as well as ability within the garden. And I put this picture in here just because I love, love, love all of those beautiful colors of the vegetables and flowers that we grow in the enabling garden. There's something very joyful about seeing these colors and the vibrancy of them. So it stimulates our sort of happy thoughts about the colors, and you can imagine how some of these things might taste. So that's part of what the therapeutic value of horticulture and being in the garden does. When we are in the garden, so our involvement with plants can be active or it can be passive. And when I'm talking about active planting, they can be outdoors, it can be indoors, it can be watering, it can be digging, but we can also engage with plants in a passive way, just a walk in the woods, spending time along the river, spending time in the forest is a wonderful way to engage with nature. So there are so many different ways at Riverwood in which our therapeutic horticulture programs take place, because quite often we'll be actively managing the garden, but then we might also just take a break and take a pause and just listen to the birds around us or watch some insects at work. So these are ways in which we can involve ourselves in nature and in planting. The benefits of horticultural therapy. Well, gosh, the list is very, very long. The enabling garden at Riverwood, it uses therapeutic horticulture, which, you know, as we've talked about, is the use of plants and gardening and nature-related activities to enhance an individual's mental and physical and emotional well-being. Therapeutic horticulture is pretty amazing because it gives participants a sense of accomplishment. It helps develop social skills, confidence, self-esteem. It can aid with strength and mobility. So participants that I've worked with who are recovering from stroke are able to come into the garden, and we can work specifically on fine motor skills, using adaptive tools just to help make the gardening experience relatable and enjoyable. One of the important parts of being in a garden, being with a group too, is just that diminishing that sort of feeling of isolation. So when you're working in a group together, you may be working on sort of an individual project, but you've got this sense of community in a garden, the sense of being together. And generally, horticulture therapy is sort of a low cost and effective way of meeting therapeutic goals for individuals, but also for groups together. So I will have singles coming, individual people working, or small groups, and then larger groups as well. So the other part too is that when we do connect with nature, many people, this provides a spiritual connection with life and kind of encourages us to live in the moment. So there are many, many benefits of horticultural therapy. It's been used to support mental health goals by reducing strength and tension, really kind of improving your mood and developing some coping skills. It sort of fosters hope. When we plant a garden, it can be a wonderful way to look to the future, to look to what will come. Therapeutic horticulture has been used to support social goals. So when we're talking about social goals, we're improving the sort of ability to work with others, and maybe improving our communication skills, expressing what it is that we want to do in the garden, what we want to plant, picking our own plants. Reduces social anxiety because we can be in a very forgiving place in the garden. And sometimes it's really nice to work side by side with someone. If you're, maybe not comfortable making eye contact with someone, but you still want to talk to them and you still want to have a conversation. The garden is a wonderful place to stand shoulder to shoulder, side by side, and work in the garden. So it can, in that way, be a wonderful social activity. It also supports cognitive goals. So the ability to learn new skills or perhaps regain lost skills. If, like I was saying, if perhaps you've had an injury and something that you were able to do in the past, you feel like you're no longer able to do, then coming back into a garden environment can be a way of gently reintroducing an activity that perhaps you worked at before. It can improve memory. So it's sometimes garden stories are a way of releasing memories from the past, which can be really helpful in older adults who have Alzheimer's or signs of dementia. If you are doing a familiar thing, because so many plants have the sensory values to them, the touch, the smell, these can be triggers to remember a past. And then, of course, supporting physical goals too. So improving coordination, retraining muscles, perhaps muscles that haven't been used for a while, strength and balance, all of these things. You can see that the girls here are digging and they've got a wheelbarrow. And so they're using their strength and muscles and coordination in the garden, and to have sort of a, kind of a fun time out there as well in all weathers. So gardening can happen, really outdoors 3 seasons, which is wonderful. I mean, it's definitely our shoulder seasons like today, and later in the fall can be chilly, but you just kind of dress for it. And honestly, once you start digging a pile of dirt, you'll soon start to get a little bit of heat generated through your body. So there are many values, therapeutic values in planting seeds, and we've sort of talked a little bit about how wonderful it is to plant a garden and to sort of have the hope that you put in a seed and that through the season you will be rewarded with beautiful plants, beautiful flowers, beautiful vegetables. It can be really an amazing feeling to harvest your own fruits and vegetables, things that you have nurtured along the way, you've cared for. And so there's great value in planting seeds, and we do a lot of that at the garden. And yeah, with a little bit of sun and water and care, your teeny little bean seed will produce some wonderful looking beans at the end of the season. So before we kind of get into the seeds, that's just a little bit of background about horticultural therapy and what happens in the enabling garden and in many places. I mean, we're fortunate at Riverwood to have a garden dedicated to this type of planting, but just because it's a dedicated garden, it doesn't mean that you can't take those ideas into your own garden when you're planting, and your own garden doesn't need to be a big garden like Riverwood. It can be a flower pot. It can be, a little balcony garden. It could be a community garden, a shared garden, or maybe it's a family member's garden that you go and help with. There's a lot of value in that. So before we actually get onto the seed aspect, I'm just going to take a pause here because I'm wondering, Catherine, if there are any questions in the chat, and teachers and students, if you have a specific question about horticultural therapy, then this is a great time to ask it. Or if you want to ponder those questions, we can sort of hold them at the end. But Catherine, do we have anything at the moment?
There are no comments or questions in the chat, but maybe the teachers can take a minute to just survey their class. But after the season of quiet colors through the winter, it sure is enlivening to see the produce that you've grown in the garden. And, you know, I've had the opportunity to do some gardening from time to time, and, you know, working with native plants too, with student volunteers. And certainly my own personal experience of doing that work is I always leave with more energy than I came with. And I can't think of very many other activities that are like that.
So that's a very good point, Catherine. All right, well then let's move on to a discussion on seeds, because that's really what we're going to be talking about today is what we can grow and how is the best way to grow it. So at Riverwood and in my garden and generally, I mean, I like to try lots and lots of different things. I will grow peas, I'll grow beans, I'll grow squash. And I don't have experience growing all of these things before. So a lot of it is trying. And, you know, the best seeds to grow are when you're talking about vegetables and fruits, well, let's grow what you like, right? I mean, there's not much point growing these beautiful shelled peas if you're one of those kids who likes to hide the peas under the other vegetables because you don't want to eat them. So there's something to be said for picking the plant that you love to eat and trying to grow that. So I encourage you to explore the different things and think about what it is that you like. I happen to love tomatoes, and so last year I had, I think, 15 different types of them growing because I just wanted to try so many different ones. And the thing about tomatoes too is we kind of get into this, oh, tomatoes are red. And then you realize that tomatoes are actually yellow and orange, and sometimes they're pink, sometimes they're blue. And so I love to explore the color of seeds and the color of vegetables too. So if you remember at the beginning, I said that I really love to grow beans. Well, this is one of my favorite beans to grow, and I grow it for a number of reasons. It's a scarlet runner bean, and you can see in the top left-hand side there that it's first of all, it's a beautiful bean. It's got this sort of pinky purple with a dark, almost black shell to it, and it's a fairly large bean. So in the garden, with the participants that I work with, it's a good size bean. It's a great one to kind of pick up and explore. And I mean, look at these beautiful flowers that it creates. So these gorgeous kind of red orange bean flowers, a beautiful tall, you can see the barn in the background there. So I've grown, this is what's called a pole bean. So it likes to crawl up poles. If you give it a space to grow, it'll just keep going upwards and upwards. And then one of my most favorite things is to watch the bees in the garden, and the scarlet runner beans always attract number of bees. This is a beautiful carpenter bee that really, it almost looks like it's hugging the flower as it sort of sucks the nectar and gets the pollen out of there. So it's really important to me to include plants that are attractive to pollinators. I'm a beekeeper, so I'm very aware of the struggles that many of both our native bees as well as honeybees are facing. And so anything that we can do at Riverwood to create gardens that support pollinator plants, vegetables that flower to give us these beautiful flowers that will then, you know, as the result of the hard work of all of the pollinators, these bees and insects will fly around and pollinate the plants, and we will be blessed with a beautiful produce. So You will always find runner beans in the garden out of the enabling garden. But I did want to show you this picture too, because when we look at seeds, they're so very different. They're different sizes, they're different shapes, they have different requirements, and some of them we kind of forget that they are even seeds. I mean, how many of you like to have poppy seed bagels? Well, you know, look at those little poppy seeds. Those poppy seeds come directly from the plants. And, you know, we sometimes remove our sort of, you know, thought of what a seed looks like and what it's used for. We just, you know, sometimes think, oh, poppy seeds, those go in cake, lemon poppy seed cake. And it's sort of a reminder that they do come from plants. And so I just put this collection out here because, you know, some of them don't even look like seeds. When you look at this one here, the calendula, its seed shape is quite unusual. It looks like a little sort of a U shape. And I think that if you were to sort of see those in, you know, to start with, you might think, oh, what is that? You know, sometimes when you see it lying in the ground, it actually looks like a little bug that's fallen onto the soil. That's kind of dried up like a little worm or something. And then you realize that's actually the seeds. So I do like to take a little bit of time to explore and examine seeds because I just think that they're so cool. Of course, if we're to grow plant seeds, this gives us the capacity to, you know, grow our own vegetables. And like I say, if you're going to grow vegetables, pick the ones that you want to eat. Do you love carrots? Get some carrot seeds in there. Cucumber, if you put a cucumber plant in or a zucchini plant, you will be eating these things for the entire summer because they can be very prolific producers. So it's a really good thing to do a little bit of research about how much space your plants require, how much light they need. Do they really need, you know, sun and heat in order for them to grow? And once you start your little seeds indoors, do you have the space to then transplant them into your garden, or what's that going to look like? I am the worst for starting to grow squash seeds and pumpkin seeds. I get really excited about it, and then I realize that my backyard garden, I live in Toronto, I have a very small garden that doesn't get a lot of sun, and there's absolutely no way I'm going to grow a pumpkin in my garden. But fortunately for me, I have a son who has got a very large sunny garden, and I pass my seedlings on to him. But it is a consideration. How much space do you have? How much light do you get? How much sun do you get? Do you have time to water and nurture this plant? You can also, of course, grow your own flowers, and that can be extremely rewarding too. Again, depending on how sunny your garden is or your balcony is, you can grow flowers from flower seeds. So these are snapdragons that I grew, and we were just rewarded with such a beautiful summer scene where all these pinks and yellows and whites grew, and they were just beautiful. But of course, you know, things like sunflowers are easy to grow, and they just look absolutely beautiful in the garden. So I would highly recommend these to be one of your you know, first choices of planting in the garden, just because they look beautiful. The bees love them, the butterflies love them, and then of course, as the seeds start to ripen on them, you'll be visited by chipmunks and squirrels and birds who also love them. So they're so wonderful at producing so much for the garden. Now, we've talked about, you know, seeds and you know, we know that they come from plants, and we also know that we can go to the store to buy seeds. There's you know, since COVID, I think there's been a lot of people purchasing seeds, but when we couldn't go to stores, became this huge online you know, kind of ability to purchase seeds. So now that's a way in which many people can buy their seeds. There's lots of places across Canada, within Ontario and the West Coast, the East Coast, that produce amazing seeds. And so you can certainly search things online. The sort of old-fashioned way to do it is to go to a seed catalog, and I'll show you a really cool one from a company in the States. But just to browse through these seed catalogs and get an idea of just the variety. And I think the wonderful thing about growing your own food is that, you know, we sort of get lulled into this sort of thought of, you go to the grocery store and there's maybe a couple of different kinds of tomatoes to choose from, a couple of different kinds of squash, or maybe, you know, one or two corn. When you look in these seed catalogs, you realize that there's literally hundreds of different types of vegetables and fruits and things that we don't generally find in our grocery stores because they're not mass grown. So, you know, to be able to go to a farmer's market, you might see more than you would if you were in a grocery store. So it's kind of cool to explore, you know, what there are. One of the things that you can do once you've started to grow is to sort of save your own seeds. And that's an example of ones that we did, were this heritage seed called Mandan Bride corn, which is a flint corn, which means you would grind it up to make corn flour. You can see that those seeds are all sorts of different colors. So we had initially purchased this package of seeds, and then we grew our corn, and look at the produce that we had. We had these incredible colors, these beautiful seeds, and we use these decoratively in the fall. But then what you do is you just basically scrape off these hard dried seeds, and those become your seeds for next year. So you might buy a package of seeds that might have maybe 20 or 30 seeds in them, and then you grow from those seeds. And each one of those, even if your one plant only produces one corn of cob, look at all the seeds you would get just from that. So you can save some for yourself, and then you could share with others. And that's one of the other brilliant ways to sort of look and explore seeds, if you're interested in it, is a seed exchange, or something called Seedy Saturday. And Seedy Saturdays were started by an organization called Seeds of Diversity. And the idea behind it was to bring lots and lots of different growers together to share their seeds. And so you will go to a Seedy Saturday, and there'll be lots of different people selling seeds. Some people will be exchanging seeds, swapping seeds. So it could be like, hey, I grew corn last year and you grew beans. Well, do you want some of my corn seeds? Here's some of my bean seeds. So it's a really cost-effective way to explore things that you might not have tried before. There's also something called a seed library, and seed libraries are sort of popping up in our regular libraries. So in the same way that you would go to a library to borrow a book, you could go to the seed library to take some seeds. So perhaps there's a tomato seed that you'd like. So you would take some of those tomato seeds and then grow them. And what the seed library would require you to do is, at the end of the season, save some of those seeds and then bring them back to the library again so that somebody else can use them. So it's a great way to try some new seeds, share seeds that you've grown, and just talk to people who have experience growing, and that's a wonderful way to do it.
Carrie, there's a really good question that I'd love to know the answer to as well. From Miss Castro's class, students are noticing that you can buy seeds in the dollar store, Canadian Tire, and garden centers. Do you think there's a difference between those types of seeds? Is there a difference in quality, genetic diversity, anything else you can think of?
That's a very, very good question. What I would say is that, yeah, I mean, there are different levels of seeds for sure. And I would say that when we talk about heritage seeds, we're talking about heirloom seeds, seeds that have been grown for many, many years. And the process of collecting them, drying them, and storing them is of a very high quality. Let's put it that way. So the seeds that you can buy at, and I mean, I know that places like the big box stores, Canadian Tire, a lot of them will carry the same types of seeds. And so, yes, you can buy them there. Absolutely. I would recommend that, Canadian seeds, Canadian owned seeds are great. And part of that is because if you, the seed package itself will give you a lot of information. We'll take a look at a couple of them afterwards. It will tell you kind of where the the growing conditions are good for. One of the things that's, sorry, I'm not articulating this particularly well, but if you buy seeds from the West Coast, and there's a company called West Coast Seeds, their seeds are amazing, but sometimes you have to remember that they are giving instructions as if you were planting those seeds on the West Coast, maybe in Vancouver or Vancouver Island, where our zone for growing is slightly different than what it is in Ontario. So I would say that your seeds themselves, you can buy them really from anywhere, but just make sure that when you're planting them, you're following the instructions for your planting zone, so that you don't plant them out too early and then they get hit by frost. So for example, in sort of Ontario, like Mississauga, Toronto area, our growing zone is between 6A and 6B, which means that our last possible frost date, brace yourselves for this because I never like to say it, but it's the middle of May. It can be around May the 10th, 11th, 12th. And so when you look at the back of a seed package, it says, start indoors 6 weeks before last frost date. Well, 6 weeks before last frost date for us means, kind of starting around the beginning of April. But if you perhaps live on Vancouver Island, well, it's already been very warm and sunny out there before. So their frost date might, do they even have frost on Vancouver Island? I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's probably more like in February. So you could start your seeds indoors on the West Coast in Vancouver Island. You could start them in January easily. If we were to start seeds in January, then, 6 weeks in, we would be, Family Day weekend, middle of February, we still have a lot of snow, and there's no way we could then transplant them into the garden. So that's kind of a long way of saying that you can purchase your seeds in any of those places. If you can purchase organic seeds that have not been treated. And I would say that that is perhaps the difference between the seeds that you might purchase at the dollar store versus seeds that you might purchase from an heirloom or heritage seed company, would be that those seeds could be treated. And by treated, it means that they've had something applied to them that make them unappealing for maybe bugs and things. But unfortunately, what that does is it changes the sort of genetic makeup of the plant and can pass on sort of sickness to insects. So if you're unsure, then it's a good, it's a good idea to question whether the seeds have been treated with anything. If a person can't give you an answer, if they can't say for sure, nope, these seeds are absolutely not treated, they are organic and they're absolutely pure, then I would say perhaps don't buy them unless you know for sure. But again, the internet is a wonderful thing now, so you can kind of do a very quick search on some local seed companies, and that's why I was sort of pointing out Seeds of Diversity, because these Seedy Saturdays for the last couple of years they haven't been running because of COVID. They are starting to sort of show up again, and so a lot of those seed producers are very local. They're local in Ontario, and they grow their seeds, they harvest their seeds, and they really they really make a very concerted effort to make those seeds very, viable. Because that's the other thing too. If the seeds have not been harvested properly, then they might not actually germinate. Whereas if the process of harvesting seeds is done correctly, then you should have a high germination rate in your seeds.
Thanks,
Does that
Carrie.
answer-
Wow, that was such a great answer. Wow.
Too long, perhaps.
No, it's so helpful. And I don't know if this is something that you were going to talk about today or if you were going to get to this tomorrow, but there's certainly questions about how to help some of these seeds grow, the soil conditions, I'm sure light, water conditions that are required, so that when you either grow or invest in some of these amazing seeds, you've got some opportunity at successfully bringing them to the fullness of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just sort of, that's kind of what we were talking about moving into, is planting and taking care of seeds. But I'm really conscious of the time here. I've talked a lot and it's already 11:45. So I'm just wondering from the teachers here, how much time we have.
Actually, our period ends at 10:50. So
10. Okay. So then maybe what I'll do is we will just touch on the actual growing of the seeds, and then tomorrow we'll pick up where we left off as we talk a little bit more about planting. So let's see, we know what the seeds do need to grow. I mean, Catherine sort of touched on that there in terms of, the sunlight, the soil, all of these things are very important. And what we're really wanting to know is, how do we get from these seeds to these beautiful sunflowers, and how do we get to have these greens and amazing herbs, the coriander, the lettuces, and how are we going to be able to grow our beets, our tomatoes, our peas? And so I think what we'll do is kind of leave it on that thought, and tomorrow we'll get right into sort of a little demonstration of how to plant, how to transplant, and then how to kind of grow for our gardens. So
I love it. Thank you so much. And so tomorrow, yes, we will see you back here at 10 o'clock. Teachers have signed up for that as well. So I want to
awesome.
thank the classes for joining us today, and hopefully and thank you so much. This was amazing, valuable information. I love gardening myself, and the benefits are just amazing for students, for people, for teachers, just to get out there and feel the magic, I guess, of a garden, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will see you tomorrow. Thank you, classes, for coming. And if you have any questions, classes, please send them our way. And if I could forward them to you, maybe you could see how everybody's feeling today, and maybe you can tackle that in the next presentation, which is.
That sounds great. Yes, Ms. Castro. That's what I was going to say. If there's any, if anything has left some holes and some big questions for your students, then please either, sort of think about them for tomorrow. You're welcome to send an email our way, or through Ms. Castro, she can direct them to us, and we'll address them tomorrow. So anyway, well, listen, I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your school day. We'll look forward to checking in again tomorrow. And thank you so much for inviting us into your virtual classroom.
Yes, thank you. And I will try to resolve this audio visual issue.
Oh, it's fine. As long as we can hear you, as long as you can hear us, then that's great.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. We'll see everybody tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.